our mantra is, if you want to get healthier and live longer, don't try to change your behavior. You'll fail. Change your surroundings.
Boom, here it is, guys. Blue Zone's Kitchen, brand new book from New York Times bestselling author Dan Buettner, and this one is selling like wildfire. We are excited to tell you a lot more about it today.
Absolutely. So today we're going to be talking with Dan Buettner, who we consider to be a very good friend of ours and a force for good. And he's the genius behind the Blue Zone's way. Now, Dan has an undying dedication to helping people around the world understand the Blue Zone's lifestyle. And the Blue Zone's lifestyle is literally just a collection of very simple and pragmatic lifestyle choices that are known and have been proven over and over and over again to add years to your life and help you decrease your risk for many chronic diseases, including but not limited to heart disease, hypertension, high cholesterol, cancer, all forms of diabetes, chronic kidney disease, as well as conditions that have been historically considered incurable, including dementia and Alzheimer's disease. Today, we're going to be talking with Dan about his new book, Blue Zone's Kitchen, 100 Recipes to Live to 100, just like Robbie showed you. And this book, I kid you not, has been flying off of the shelves and truly making a big, big impact.
Yes, the book is an instant New York Times bestseller, and as soon as you see it, you'll understand. It's full of beautiful photographs from National Geographic photographer, just very, very beautiful. And you'll see Dan with people as he goes and visits them. And you'll notice that many of the recipes include oil, and that's okay, because you want to know what? If you're following the Mastering Diabetes method, you're reducing your oil, you can use these recipes and just substitute the oil. These are beautiful, beautiful recipes you can absolutely use and make. I mean, I can tell you this specific one right here. It's called Minestrone 3 Ways. This is from Sardinia, and these are absolutely beautiful, beautiful recipes that are 100% Mastering Diabetes method compliant. You just replace the oil with another form of cooking liquid and you will be just fine. Today, we are excited to be joined by Dan Buettner. Dan is an explorer, National Geographic fellow, award-winning journalist and producer, and New York Times bestselling author. He discovered the 5 places in the world dubbed Blue Zone hotspots, where people live the longest, healthiest lives. Buettner now works in partnership with municipal governments, large employers, and health insurance companies to implement Blue Zones projects in communities, workplaces, and universities. Blue Zones projects are well-being initiatives that apply lessons from the Blue Zones to entire communities by focusing on changes to the local environment, public policy, and social networks. The program has dramatically improved the health of more than 5 million Americans to date. His books, The Blue Zones, Lessons for Living Longer from the People Who've Lived the Longest, Thrive, Finding Happiness the Blue Zone's Way, The Blue Zones Solution, Eating and Living Like the World's Healthiest People, and The Blue Zones of Happiness were all national bestsellers. And today we will be discussing his wildly popular brand new book, The Blue Zone's Kitchen, 100 Recipes to Live to 100. This book is an instant New York Times bestseller and has taken the world by storm. Booksellers such as Amazon can't even keep it in stock. It's been a #1 bestseller on Amazon for over a week, and same thing for the Wall Street Journal. Dan has appeared on the Today Show, Oprah, NBC Nightly News, and Good Morning America, and has keynoted speeches at TED-Med, Bill Clinton's Health Matters Initiative, and Google's Zeitgeist. Dan also holds 3 Guinness World Records in distance cycling. This guy can do it all. Thank you so much for being with us today.
I feel like I ought to quit while I'm ahead and just say thank you.
You hold 3 world records? I didn't even know that. That's impressive. What are they?
Yeah, well, you guys were doing useful and productive things after college. I biked from Alaska to Argentina. It was all downhill. I biked around the world, and I biked the top of Africa to the bottom, across the Sahara and the Congo and down to the southern tip. And they took about a year each, and they each set world records.
So they set the world record for what? Time to travel a certain distance, or just total number of insane miles ridden on a bicycle, or what?
Well, in the same way people set a world record for biking across America, I hold the record for biking across these continents. And by the way, they're challenged all the time. So, I mean, there's a number of other nutcases like me who are out doing these things.
So how many miles a day are you riding on average when you do these long journeys?
100. But, you know, we're carrying all of our packs with us. We're carrying sometimes 100 pounds of gear. Back in those days, you know, we had canvas panniers, and sometimes we had to carry 30. Crossing the Sahara on bicycle, we had to carry about 35 liters of water, you know, and all of our food. And we had this sort of bulky GPS, early technology to keep us from getting lost and dying. So it was a real adventure. It was, you know, it was before the days of the internet and social media. So, you know, people didn't follow us while we were doing it. We made a bit of a splash when we got back, but a lot of it was just yearning for adventure and interested in the world and interested in seeing the world on bicycle. By the way, I pedaled right past Costa Rica. So I through Costa Rica on my way to Ushuaia. So,
so give us a little bit of insight here. When you were biking around the world, what was your interest in the blue zones already present, or was doing this journey something that like set the stage for you to be like, huh, there's different lifestyles around the planet. Why are you guys doing well and you guys not doing well? Did sort of some of the thought process start while biking?
Well, I'm, you know, like you're a diabetes activist and healthcare practitioner. My sort of ikigai, my purpose is explore. I like to go out in the world and discover useful things and bring them back. And the earliest iterations for me was taking off on bicycles. And I was always a writer. I was writing for the Chicago Tribune and the Minneapolis Star and Tribune and Outside Magazine. And I wrote books about these experiences as a way to explore and sort of share it. 15 expeditions later, in 1999, we were doing an expedition in Okinawa. I was doing more interactive scientific expeditions at the time called quests. And we stumbled across this really interesting mystery of why this southeastern island was experiencing the lowest rate of disability-free life expectancy. So in other words, they were living the longest, healthiest lives. And I had learned from my editor at National Geographic that, you know, while biking across continents are nice and they're good youthful adventures, if you want to get in the realm of you know, real expeditions that matter, they need to add to the body of knowledge or illuminate the human condition or educate. And the idea of finding places where people live the longest and then reverse engineering what they do in such a way that people can put those lessons to work in their lives, that is I think, in a way, the consummate manifestation of what explorers ought to be doing these days.
For sure. Yeah, no, I mean, I fully agree with you because, you know, in this day and age, unfortunately, people have, I want to say, become victim to a corrupt food system and then also eaten themselves into an advanced state of chronic disease. Now, there's more chronic disease on this planet than there has ever been, you know, in the entire human history. So it's interesting that you have a chance to be able to witness that firsthand and then take what you've learned and translate that so that people can say, oh, wait a minute, there's actually some very simple techniques here that I can use to promote longevity. And this idea of living longer by making decisions today is something that very few people are really talking about. And that's one of the reasons why we love talking about blue zones as a concept, because it's a concept, but it's also a set of practices that can actually truly change people's lives and actually turn them into the healthiest versions of themselves. So my question for you is, you've been to the blue zone so many times. You know, you've written many books about the blue zones. And in order to create the Blue Zones cookbook, correct me if I'm wrong, but you went back to the Blue Zones to research this book and learn about what recipes people in the blue zones are actually making. So why did you decide to return?
Well, to your point about the food system, you called it a corrupt food system. I actually find it useful to think of it as, or to frame it as, we've just over-innovated. We have to remember that until about 1970, there weren't enough calories necessary to feed Americans. And it was innovation, it was business innovation that created a system, a distribution system, an agricultural system, first of all, to feed enough people. The problem is now we've just over-innovated. And now we have, we need maybe 2,500 calories a day to live a decent life, but there's over 4,000 calories per person per day for everybody in America. We've just produced too many. And it's not, I don't like to think of corporations as being evil or corrupt. They've just done too good a job at innovation and enterprise. And now the challenge for everybody is to innovate in a way where people can eat healthier mindlessly. The core tenet of Blue Zones is if you try to change your behavior, with the exception of you two guys and a few other highly disciplined and enlightened individuals, you're going to fail with most Americans. Diets don't work, exercise programs don't work. In Blue Zones, they have no greater individual responsibility for their health than we Americans do. They just live in an environment where fruits and vegetables and beans and nuts and tubers are the cheapest, most accessible, and most delicious food. So knowing that, David McLain, the National Geographic photographer, and I, 2 years ago, went back to Blue Zones. Icaria, Greece, Okinawa, Japan, Sardinia, Italy, Nicoya Peninsula of Costa Rica, very close to where you are right now, and the Adventists in Loma Linda, California. And before these American food cultures completely blast away the food tradition, I sat on stools in old ladies' kitchens up in the mountains of Sicily, Sardinia, and Icaria, and captured 100 recipes that have been used for over 500 years. And then David, the photographer, shot the ingredients and the food techniques and the tables and the people who were making this food and the setting. And I don't like to think of this as a cookbook. It's called the Blue Zone Kitchen, 100 recipes to live to 100, but it's really constructed like a 300-page National Geographic article. In other words, it's all National Geographic photography. The introductions are very science-heavy. I explain why these foods are yielding largely disease-free people. And then, because people like to have something they can use, I captured 20 recipes in each of the 5 Blue Zones that follow the Blue Zones food guidelines, which, by the way, are very close to the prescription that you guys offer for people to get insulin sensitivity under control.
Yeah, so you mentioned something really interesting there. You said the key is to have an environment where you can eat healthy mindlessly. That's really interesting. How can people make that happen in their life? I mean, what can somebody do? Do we have to wait for the environment to change? Is there things that we can set up? Like, how do we make that happen?
That's almost like a trick question, Robbie, because anybody watching you right now, all they have to do is look at your backdrop. There is no negative choice in that whole backdrop. They can grab anything off of any shelf and it's going to help them live longer. And to your point, get their insulin under control. So there's no reason, there's this idea of a Ulysses contract. It comes from the Iliad, where Ulysses tied himself to the mast so he could float through the Sargasso Sea and hear the sirens without, going crazy. If you set up your home the way you set up the backdrop behind you, if you make friends with people like you two guys who by default are going to eat plant-based food, if you make an effort to make sure your family lives in a place where there's easy access to fruits and vegetables and it's inconvenient to go eat burgers, fries, and pizzas, well, you don't need heroic discipline to make the right choice. And Blue Zones is our mantra is, if you want to get healthier and live longer, don't try to change your behavior. You'll fail. Change your surroundings.
It's brilliant. Okay, so something you discuss in this book, as I read through, is you say that in the Blue Zones, they eat approximately 20 core ingredients. And so can you give us insight into what are the most common ingredients across the Blue Zones?
In alphabetical order, please.
All right. Beans, greens, nuts, tubers, and whole grains. And I'm using the W. So there, I had to do it in real. So those 5. But the actual ingredients are different depending whether you're in Okinawa or Sardinia or Korea. Conveniently, I have a Blue Zone in an Asian format, a Mediterranean format, a Greek format, a Latin American format, an American format. And so they change from place to place. But, when you go to Okinawa, you're going to see mostly tofu and turmeric and different and garlic and sesame. In Korea, you're going to see garlic, lemon, and rosemary, and as kind of the base. You're in Sardinia, you're going to see pasta, sourdough bread, fava beans, tomatoes. In Costa Rica, you're going to see whole grain corn tortillas, beans, squash, tons of tropical fruit. And then among the Seventh-day Adventists, they're biblical. They're a little bit less on 20 ingredients. They mostly follow Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, where, this is from God, the diet of the Garden of Eden. Every plant that bears seed and every tree that bears fruit. So if you think about that, fruits are, apples and citrus and even tomatoes, and seeds are nuts and grains and legumes and beans. So, the point being, if you want to eat for longevity, focus on peasant foods, simple foods that for the most part are cheap, and with a little bit of the genius from these kitchens and Blue Zones, you can make them taste good so you'll eat them for a long time.
Okay, so Dan, I got to ask you, I'm sort of bothered by this question for a long time. I live in Costa Rica, just like you mentioned earlier. I live 1 hour away from Nicoya.
I know where you're going on this one.
Okay, you know exactly. We talked about this in the past. For those of you who don't know this, you come to Costa Rica, you go to Nicoya. The first thing you see when you get into the heart of Nicoya is what?
A Kentucky KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken. It breaks my heart.
Exactly right. Every time I'm there, I think to myself, like, wow, where is this Nicoya that Dan talked about? It's either a place that used to exist before the Western culture invaded it or, changed it to having fast food options all over the place. But in addition to KFC, there's also a whole bunch of restaurants that are serving fried foods all over the place. So if I go to Nicoya, I think to myself, I don't know if these are the exact people that he's talking about, or if they live up in a hill somewhere that happens to be close to Nicoya. But point being is that even in a place like Costa Rica, my wife and I do a really good job of trying to grocery shop and find the cleanest food that we can possibly find. And it turns out that even here in Costa Rica, there's a huge use of pesticides. It doesn't make any sense because you're like, it's in one of the most environmentally friendly countries in the entire world, but yet there's a huge, there's an overuse of pesticides. So for people who are truly adopting a plant-based diet and they're eating according to your recommendations, how necessary is it that they shop for organic or non-pesticided or locally grown clean food? Is it that important, or is it more important to just start eating a more plant-focused diet and not necessarily worry about how clean the foods are to begin with?
So I'm hearing a two-part question. The first question is, about Nicoya and where are people eating a true Blue Zones diet. You have to remember, in order for me to write the Blue Zones Kitchen, we did a meta-analysis of dietary surveys that have been done over the past 100 years. So we weren't just looking at what people in Nicoya are eating today, i.e. KFC. We were looking what they were eating 10 years ago that KFC wasn't there. 5 years ago, it wasn't there. So if you want to know what a 100-year-old ate to live to be 100, you have to know what he ate or she ate when they were 10 and 30 and 50 and 70 and 90. So what you see in the Blue Zone Kitchen is a aggregation of the dietary wisdom of over the last 100 years, not just what they're eating today. And yes, as Nicoya adopts the American food culture, it's already happening. The diabetes rates are soaring. They're dying of heart disease. Obesity is getting under control, and it's heartbreaking. But indeed, if you go to San Juan Diaz, which is just north of Nicoya, and you get out of your car and you walk up a hill a few miles, you can see villages where people are still largely eating beans, rice, corn tortillas, and the fruits and vegetables they're growing in their Chorotega-inspired gardens. So it's important to realize that. Now to your point about organics. The truth is we don't know how bad pesticides are damaging our health right now. We simply don't have, we can take case by case, but on an epidemiology level, we haven't been able to measure it well enough or follow it long enough. So it's hard to tell. But, I work in 50 cities, and I can tell you something for sure. If you let people give you the argument that they can't afford to eat whole foods organic foods, you're never going to get out of the chutes. So I basically say, don't worry about buying the most expensive, freshest fruits and vegetables. Go out and go to these places where you can buy in bulk and buy beans. I was at Costco the other day and saw a 25-pound bag of pinto beans for $9.99. For another $15, you can get a 20-pound bag of rice. You can get some spices. I know you guys don't like oil, but for a lot of people, the gateway is a little bit of oil in their food, so it gets them off of the richness of eating, meat and so forth. And you can start there, and you're 70% the way to eating a Blue Zones diet with those two foods alone. And you don't want to get them wrapped up too much and buying, super fresh. Canned tomatoes are, in my opinion, are fine. Yes, you could point to this small risk in the inside lining of it, but it's a much greater risk to your health to skip those non-organic vegetables altogether because you're afraid of pesticides or GMOs or whatever other thing that's been marketed to us as a big danger.
We could not possibly agree more. We celebrate progress and people understanding, hey, where you're coming from, move towards a more plant-based diet. That's something to celebrate. It's not about perfection, and getting lost in these details can be very problematic for a lot of people. So I'm glad you're on the same page with that.
We are indeed.
One main question that I have for you. I know you have a huge collection of raving fans all around the world. And I know that there's many people in our audience that want to read your new book. So the question is, where can they buy your book? Is it even possible to buy your book? Because the last I heard, Amazon didn't have it, Barnes & Noble didn't have it. It just wasn't possible to buy it because this thing was selling so quickly that you can't really buy it right now. But is that true? And if not, tell people exactly where they can go to buy this book and what are they going to learn from it.
Thank you. Well, the National Geographic, my publishers, has done 7 reprints in the last 4 weeks. And if you order it in Amazon, you'll get it. It'll take about a week to get, but you'll get it. And the idea of the book is 100 recipes to live at 100. But we also give you free recipes, not the exact same recipes, but if you come to bluezones.com, We have free recipes there. We have a meal planner, and I love it if people would just bypass the book if they want, go right to the meal planner, because they can put that to work in their life. And yeah, I'd say those are the best vehicles right now.
I think people should go for both, Dan. The book and the meal planner. It's a great decision, guys. This thing is beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful and very inspiring. I love your opening sentence of the book. Your opening sentence is, let's see here. It's, if you want to live to a healthy 100, eat like healthy people who've lived to 100.
There you go. That sums it up.
Robbie, give us a quick tour. Show us and flip through some of the photos in the book. I know it's probably.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just, the whole thing is beautiful. Let's see. Like, again, you get to see the people that Dan went and visited, and he took pictures of them, the people that actually made these recipes.
Actually, that's David McLain, a celebrated National Geographic photographer, who took the pictures.
Okay, what certain foods are in certain blue zones that are like the highlight of those blue zones. So it's just straight up beautiful. The whole thing is beautiful.
I love it. I love it.
You guys are very kind.
For sure. Also, below this video, we're going to be putting Dan's personal cell phone number and his address. So
call me late at night. I love calls after midnight.
Dan, this has been a pleasure. It's been great to be with you. We could talk for hours, but I know that we're both on tight schedules right now. So thanks for continuing to advocate about the mechanism, the exact way, the simple habits that people can put into place that are going to decrease their risk for all chronic diseases, whether diabetes, heart disease, cancer, kidney failure, aging too quickly, digestive concerns. There's literally no health
condition. Even dementia.
Say that again?
Even dementia.
Even dementia, which is something that's up until a few years ago was considered 100%.
We found on Nicoya about 1/5 the rate of dementias we have here in America. Most of us can avoid dementia.
Yeah, it's absolutely phenomenal. The true power of eating a Blue Zones diet is something that is even hard to put into the words, because imagine there was a pill that you could take. Imagine there was some kind of pharmaceutical medication that could decrease your risk for literally all chronic disease. That would become a blockbuster drug. It would be a multi-billion-dollar drug. You're explaining how that drug exists by changing the stuff that you put on your plate. It's just that simple. And in addition to that, also making other lifestyle changes as well.
And it tastes amazing. That's the key. You're going to love this stuff. I guarantee it. I guarantee it.
Well, let me just say I'm very proud to lock arms with you guys. I see you two as great activists, and I like to think of it as a movement. I think you two are doing more than most doctors are doing it at saving people's life and life expectancy. I salute you, and I'm honored to work with you, even though we're on separate continents right now. But I look forward to collaborating in the future.